When you ask the differences between from the eyes of a prosecutor or an investigator working with a prosecutor, were the second through fifth or sixth cases, how were they different than the first? Well, the key way they were different from the first is there was not going to be videotaped evidence of how these things actually happened with real live actors, not actors, performers, thieves doing the thieving live before your eyes. So in that sense, in the first case, you didn't have to do very much persuasion that there was something rotten here, because you could see it, as well as study financial records. You could see thievery occur. So from that standpoint, one could argue that the first case was always going to be the most compelling case for a verdict of guilty versus not guilty. But that's not necessarily the case, because some of the subsequent cases, as people, more and more cooperating persons, testified and gave real flavor, real color to the day-by-day goings-on these units, you had a thicker and broader construct of the gap between when we were good police and when we were bad police.
Asset forfeiture and tracing did happen in that case. In other words, if through an investigation by FBI or IRS, one can trace the acquisition of an asset to stolen money, that item is seized and forfeited. And that happened. I mean, these guys lost the houses, they lost the boats, etc.
How was Big Spender able to remain robust? Why did indictments continue to be sought and convictions continue to be won, even though all the bling had kind of left the prosecutions from the standpoint of it wasn't exactly like a man on the moon anymore. A man on the moon became routine. You know, the Mercury astronauts became routine. Over time, certainly to the media, and perhaps to some in the viewing public, these prosecutions moved into being more mundane, less memorable. I don't look back and think of the subsequent waves of prosecutions as being less meaningful to the men and women who were actually in the arena. The prosecutors still knocked each other over to try to get their part of Operation Big Spender. Some investigators viewed working these cases, first wave through last wave, as some of the signal work they did in their entire careers, whether at the FBI or at LA County Sheriff's or at IRS.
It's actually quite common in these big investigations to have FBI and IRS. IRS is obviously very good at following the money,
Yeah.
and these cases all involve tax cases, because when these police officers were stealing money, they weren't reporting it on their tax returns, and there was money laundering. So, for example, in at least one case I can think about, one of the main sheriff's deputies who was prosecuted and convicted twice, Gardner, I think his wife was also indicted for money laundering. So the IRS, the FBI does these cases as well, but the IRS is typically involved in money laundering cases or tax cases.
They viewed what they did as a years-long mission to try to make a dent in corruption and try to announce to our community at large that we don't want people getting away with it. And if you try it, we're going to find you eventually, and eventually we're going to clean things up.